Hey, it's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another tutorial. Today I wanted to talk about Discourse. If you've never seen Discourse before, it's a forum. So if you're old school like me, you know about forum, the PHP BB bulletin boards, Simple Machines forum, Node BB bulletin boards for forums. There's just, honestly, I could go through hundreds and hundreds of names of forums probably. Those are the big ones that come to mind right away. Those are the ones that you've seen all over the internet for years and years, from the 90s all the way till now. Discourse has been around for a few years now, but it's really got a nice, clean, more modern look. It does some more modern things, so you can kind of see the screens rolling through there as I'm talking. And it's really, really great. It's got a lot of customization around it, so you can change the way that it looks. It's got themes built around it. It's got lots of things that you can do with it. And they use their own product for their community, which is awesome. And it's free. So if you take a look at their page, you can just kind of scroll down and read about what they do. One of the things that I want you to really pay attention to, so they do have pricing. They will host your stuff if you want them to, and manage it for you so you don't have to do it. I do a lot of these things. I know there's a lot of you out there that are IT professionals, and one of the biggest things for IT professionals is free is great, but how much does it really cost me? Because it may be free. It may not cost me dollars to pay to get it, but it costs me time, and it costs me energy, and it costs me effort. And if it takes more time and energy and effort in your time as an IT professional, it may be worth paying someone to handle that for you. I still suggest, if you have an open source project that is willing to help you do that for money, look into it, because that keeps them going and that keeps it open source for the rest of the world to get out there and use, which is awesome. So if you're going to pay for it anyways, why not pay for something that helps everybody else out at the same time? What I really want you to pay attention to, though, here is they show that Discourse is 100% free open source software and always will be. That's awesome. That means these guys are really dedicated to open source. Yes, they have a model for making money, which I totally appreciate, because if I had a company and I needed a system like this, I would absolutely pay them to manage and host my forum software for me, so I didn't have to do it, and so that they could make some money and support their efforts to build this software out. So yeah, I mean, if it's something like that, really look into it. So when you come here, there's a lot of things to look at, so I'll kind of show you some different tabs here. So first, pricing. They do have pricing models. If you're interested in those things, I highly recommend come look at it. It's not as much as you think whenever you really start thinking about the number of users you might be supporting. If you're supporting 100, 500, 1,000, 10,000 users, then it might be worthwhile for you to look at this and see what you can find as far as what it's going to cost you to do it yourself or have someone else do it for you. This is what their forum looks like, kind of out of the box, I would say. It's really nice. You can have your users upload avatars. You can see who's been involved in certain discussions pretty heavily. You can see which discussions have more people involved in them. You can see what has replies, what doesn't. You can sort. You can set up things like that. And they have login systems that'll plug into lots of OAuth systems like Google and Facebook and Twitter and GitHub. And you can do LDAP and SAML and things like that too. So you can actually have a single sign-on type experience for your users if you want to, which is pretty cool. So how do I install Discourse is always the question. They really just support Docker, and there's a reason for that, because it makes it easy. So don't be afraid of Docker. Docker is your friend. Docker can make things really simple, and these guys have really said, you know what, that's what we're going to do. That's how we're going to do it. If you want the basic instructions, they have a page just for basic instructions, which it looks like a lot, but when you really break it down, it's not. It's very little. It's go set up a server, install Docker, install Git optionally, go get the copy of their Docker source out there on GitHub, and then run the Docker command. And then pretty quickly, you will be at this screen where it's time to do some setup, and we'll go through that here in a minute. Finally, if you are somebody who loves the advanced stuff and wants to get into the really hardcore, detailed items of installing this thing, you are welcome to do it. Here it is. I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to do the basic install. I'm going to do the simplest thing you can find. So they have some suggestions for what size server you need. They say a 1 gigabyte DigitalOcean droplet is great. That's $5 a month. And they say New York is fine. I'm going to put it on a 2 gigabyte, I think. That's the $10 a month one. So we're going to go do that. And I'm going to show you the easiest way to do this right here. You're going to click on this. You're going to click on droplets. You're You're going to click on just create droplets. You're going to leave it on Ubuntu if that's what you like. That's the one I prefer. And you're going to go right here to the marketplace. And you're going to look down here into the D, and there is Discourse right there. We're going to click on Discourse so it's highlighted like that. We're going to move on down. And we're going to leave it on standard. We're going to drop this over to the $10 a month droplet, which gives us 2 gigabytes of RAM. And we're going to leave it on San Francisco. It's fine. We'll go down here and I'll set up my SSH keys to access my droplet. And I'm going to go on down and I'm going to give this a simple name, which is discourse.opensourceisawesome.com. And I may leave this one running, so if you want to go sign up for this and try it out, you can, and you can have a discussion with me. That maybe I'll just leave this one running. Let me make sure I spelled everything right. Yes. All right. So I'm going to hit create. That thing's going to go do what it does. So DigitalOcean's going to go do its thing. While it's doing that, I'm going to go over here and real quick log into hover.com, and we will go. Don't worry about that one. That'll be later. We're going to add a DNS entry, and this is DISCOURSE, and we'll go grab that DigitalOcean droplet IP address. Hopefully it's done by now. It is. So we're going to copy that guy, and we're going to paste it right here, and then we're going to set this to 5 minutes because we're impatient, and we'll move on. Alright, so that thing's going to do what it does. And we're going to go back to our terminal, and I'm going to do SSH root at our IP address. Yes, so when you first log in the first time, it's going to try to run you through a little bit of a wizard to let you get this thing ready. So it's going to tell you a few things that you need, so you kind of need to pay attention to that. So you need an email address for your Discourse install. You need a domain or a subdomain, which is what we just set up for our Discourse install. And you're going to need mail server information, your SMTP information. This is pretty important because it's kind of tricky to get this thing set up without mail working. It's not impossible, but it is tricky. So after you get everything set up, you can just kind of run through this thing, and it's going to ask you, are you ready to go? Basically, to cancel setup, hit Control-C, otherwise press Enter to continue. So we'll do that. So it's going to prompt you as it goes along, and I want discourse.opensourceisawesome.com. Now the cool thing about this setup is it's going to try to get a Let's Encrypt SSL certificate for us as well. So make sure you spell everything correctly. Looks good. My admin account email address. So this, you can actually put more than one. So if you have multiple people who are going to be admins on this system, you'll want to put in their email addresses. You're going to do it comma separated, and you're going to do it without any spaces between those commas. But I'm just going to do mine. So okay. SMTP server address is going to be now, if it has the default set, you can just hit enter, but I'm going to go ahead and type it anyways. You want to be really careful and make sure you type these email addresses and everything correctly. Okay, it's going to double check with you to make sure that everything you typed in looks good, and if it's not, you can hit no and try again. So double check everything, make sure it looks correct, and if it does, then you can just press enter. Now it's going to go through a build process. It takes a few minutes. It doesn't take a really long time, but I'll probably fast forward through some of this for you. Okay, it's done. So that probably took about, I don't know, 15-20 minutes to go all the way through. Don't remember that being normal, but it does take a while whenever it installs, because it does a build process. It doesn't just install and run it. It actually builds the software. So it does take a little bit, but once it's done, it'll give you a message that says log into your main account and go into Discourse. So I'm going to stop right now because my email server requires TLS. And I know that when this gets installed, it doesn't set that automatically. So it's going to tell me, hey, we emailed you a login, but it's not going to work because that's not set. So I'll kind of talk about what you need to do if that's the case for you. So you're going to do cd/var/discourse. And you can just do a little ls right here, and you can kind of see the things that are here. So the first one to take note of is this right here, this Discourse Doctor. This can really help you determine if you're going to be able to get email or not before you ever try to go run that web page. There's some other stuff, so you can rerun Discourse Setup, basically, that'll run you back through that wizard that we kind of went through in the beginning to put in all the information if you need to. So there's a lot of things that you can do right here in this folder that don't get just pointed out immediately to you. But what we need to do is in that containers folder right here, there is a file called app.yaml. So we need to edit that. So we're going to do nano containers app.yaml. So YML. In here, you're just going to scroll way down, and I have to scroll down, and then I have to blur out my password once we get down here. But a couple things you'll see. So this is basically your admin level password user, admin level user. This is your email setting setup. So down here you'll have your password, which I'm going to blur out here, and your email address and all of the information. So here's the line that gives me trouble. This is by default commented out. All you have to do is remove that little pound sign, that hashtag, and then save this file, and then exit. So Control O to save, and then hit enter, and then Control X to get out of it. Now we have to rebuild the app because we made a change to the app.yaml. This is an important step. So launcher stop app. So you do /launcher stop app from inside the var discourse directory, and then we're going to do another command to rebuild the app, which is basically /launcher rebuild app. Once you type that, you hit enter. It's going to grab that app.yaml file, and it's going to go through that build process again. It's going to try to stop the app first, so it takes about 10 seconds to make sure it stopped. We just stopped it, so it doesn't need to do that, but it does anyways. So it's going to go through this process again, and then I'll fast forward so you don't have to sit through that, but it's going to go through a build process basically and update the system with my app.yaml file, and then we can test it using that discourse-doctor file in a minute. So we'll let this build process go, and I'll be back. Alright, that was another solid 8 or 9 minutes of rebuilding. It was faster definitely than the first build, but just be aware when you start this process, you got time to get up and go have a coffee break, something. So be patient. It'll do its thing in its own time. So we're going to go to our page, and we will go to discourse.opensourceisawesome.com. And be aware that sometimes the server part finishes, but it takes a minute for the site to come up, so you might get a 503 bad gateway or 502 bad gateway error message. I can't remember the number exactly unless I see it, but it does take a little time for it to start up. So if you get that, just be patient and refresh a few minutes, and it should be up and running. We'll see here if it's going to load up for us or not. It's acting like it's trying to do something, so that's good. Alright, here we go. Great. So this is what you should see when you have a pretty successful install. And of course we just want to go to the register step right here. And it wants a username and a password, and it's minimum 15 characters by default. So again, in that app.yml file, you can change this. You might want to do it before you do the rebuild and come here the first time, but you can change this. I just leave it, it's fine. Just make it something good. And then if you have Bitwarden installed, it'll ask if you want to remember, which I do. That way I don't have to remember that thing later. So it says it's going to send me an activation email, so I've got to go check that. Hopefully everything is set up correctly. And here's my new account confirmation email. So we can make this a little larger. Really all we need to do is click on this link. And we've activated our account. And here we go. So it's going to give us a little walkthrough, which is great to do some setup here. So if you want a different language, obviously select it from here. I'm going to leave it because I am in the United States and I do speak English, but I barely speak English, so I'm just going to leave it on that. So I don't want it to be called Discourse. I want this to be called Open Source is Awesome. And this is a place for and best community ever. Yeah, that'd be great. Alright, so you can see as you progress through the wizard here, introduction, so you type in something. Alright, so I'm going to keep it public. Users can sign up on their own. So you do have other options if this needs to be a private setup or if you need to have users not sign up on their own. So contact information, this is still going to be me. And don't say anything about that. I know I don't have it HTTPS yet, it's okay. There we go. Don't have a company name, so we'll just put California Law, US, and Lubbock, Texas. Yeah, let's do Del Rio, Texas. That's where I'm at. How about that? So here you can kind of see the different options that you have for the different looks and feels for the site. I'm kind of a night mode kind of guy. I kind of like night mode. Let's do that one. Great. Tells you a little bit about the different things you can do here. So you can do all kinds of stuff with this thing. It's pretty interesting. And primary logo, I don't have those ready, so here's some things that you should have ready, but you can update this stuff later. So yeah, if you have basically different size logos, you can basically make this site look really, really clean, and you can make it yours. So I will get some open sources awesome logos set up, and I will put them up here, but I don't have them all today. This kind of shows you what it's going to look like. This shows you what it's going to look like right now because I don't have that, but again, you can update these things to look different. So if you want a different icon, you can update this icon. If you want a different icon, if somebody saves this to their homepage, you can have that as well. And you can kind of set this up differently, so we'll just leave it latest topics, but you can set this up more like a blog type forum, so where you set categories first. That way these things are always the same and you can see the different stories that are going into the categories. That's how I had my Linux users group site set up, and that's a whole other story in and of itself. But I did a bad thing. I did back up all the time. I let Discourse do the backups and religiously let them run every week. And I thought, I'm just going to update the Linux part of the server, not the Discourse part, which you can absolutely do separately. And I did, and something weird happened, and it installed some weird kernels that I wasn't expecting. And I rebooted thinking, hey, let me just reboot because I didn't see any errors when it did it. And that was a mistake. I should have first grabbed my backup and pulled it down, and I would not be in the mess I'm in today. So I'm going through a whole thing on that. But that's me. That's not Discourse. That's not Linux. That's me for not being a good steward of my setup and making sure that it was backed up. So don't make that mistake. Learn from my mistake. Is it gonna make me pick one? Oh, there we go. Cool. You can pull. You can pick which emoji set that it uses. Not real particular. I don't particularly like that one. These look fine. Twitter, great. Okay. and invite staff. So if you have other people who, again, you want to have set up as admins, this is where you would do that. I don't. Just going to move on. You haven't invited any staff. Are you sure you want to continue? Yeah. Well, yeah. Yep. All right. So it says it's ready. Good job. Just hit that final button, and it's going to stop the little bubbles from flowing. And it's going to give you some help here at first, which says your first notification. So it shows you you've got notifications up here, and then you can click on your notification, and it shows you what's going on. So I'll make this a little bit larger. You guys probably don't need it that big, but guess what? I'm blind as a bat, so I like it bigger. Okay, so it's just giving you some information about what's going to happen on the new site. 0 posts. So it starts off with some default information, default stuff that you can go get rid of. You just click on the logo and it goes back. And again, if you do this, it looks slightly different as you scale back to 100%. So this is the site. It's up. It's kind of running. We'll come back to it and we will start customizing it in the next little bit here. So we've got our Discourse site set up and we're ready to move forward a little bit here. One of the things that we need to do is just some administrative setup. So Discourse likes to give you a little bit of helper information up here, which is great. It helps you out. And you can kind of see here, they say, 5 topics and 30, posts is probably a good place to start. They want you to start inviting people to the site to get things going, which, they're just trying to help you kind of get things moving with your forum, right? People aren't just going to stumble upon your forum. You need to put it out there where people can find it. The other part, though, is the admin side. So as you log in, you'll see this right here, and you can put an image here instead of having it just be your initial. The search is actually really good on Discourse, so if you've never used it, it's really great. But here you're going to click on this link, and you'll see there's quite a few different things. So there's settings, there's admin, there's all kinds of stuff here. So when you click on settings, it'll take you actually into the admin settings section. So there's an admin dashboard. It tells you what version you're on, what's the latest version, should you update, those kind of things, right? So a smiley face, we're all up to date. That's great. As far as settings go, there's a lot of settings. So again, you can set your language. You can set the title of the site. You can set all those things that you kind of did in the wizard right here. So this is pretty important that you kind of go through this real quick and make sure everything's correct. Nothing special, but kind of go through that. The next part is branding. So remember, in the wizard we saw these things and I didn't have any assets ready, so I've gone and made some assets. This gives you the sizes that you need. So this says, height of 120 with an aspect of 3:1, so that'd be 360 by 120 minimum, right? Down here, 120 by 120. So I have these 2 assets ready. I don't have any assets for these other ones down here unless they just happen to be the same aspect ratio. So this one's 3:1 with a 120 height. I think there is another 120 by 120 down here somewhere, but there's 512 by 512. So you've got mobile assets that you might need. There's a lot of different things that you can actually go out and actually create your assets before you're ready to upload them. But let's go out here and let's just say I want to get my asset that I made, and that is in my documents here, and this is my first one. So it's done. This is kind of what it's going to look like. It's not the greatest, but it's okay. I'm not an artist, by the way. If anybody out there is an artist and you want to make a logo for me, please feel free to do that, and you can email me the email that you've seen on the screen. Hit the little check mark, and that saves that change for you. So now let's upload our other asset. It's uploading. It loads. There you go. Hit the check mark and save. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's too big. Maybe it's not liking it. I don't know why. We'll check it in a minute. I'm pretty sure I set it as 120 by 120, which is what it says it needs. Let's see. I know there was another one down here that was 120 with a 3:1 ratio. It's this one. We'll just use the same one. Okay. Cool. Oh, everything's saved now. Good. Yeah, I picked it. Maybe it's just telling me, hey, you're just reusing the same one. Yep, looks good. Uploading 100%. There we go. Now I get to save it. I don't know, it's not doing a refresh like I expect. I don't know why. It's acting kind of crazy. 512 by 512 I don't have, so we'll just keep moving. So there's quite a few down here, and you can kind of see, like, you know, what sizes do they need to be. So there's a 180 by 180, which I don't have. A 32 by 32, which I don't have. So this is good. All right. So we've done our branding. I'm going to click it one more time here, just to see if it'll save. I guess I'll go get that one for there. It says it's at 100%. I'll jump off over here. So as you keep going through, there's a lot of setup that you can do. So you can allow the users to select their own locale. Sure, why not? I don't know that everybody is going to be in exactly the same place that I'm at, so I'll allow that. Why wouldn't I? Oops, it did not like my change. There we go. So you can see I'm having a little bit of fidgety issues. I've not actually had this before, the Discourse setup, so it's interesting to see that. Interface language, so you can just set up all these different things, and I'm not going to go through everything because you can go through here and read all of the settings. I pretty much leave everything on its default. There are a few things to be aware of. So on login, there's quite a bit of stuff here that you can go set. Users, so your user control and setting up reserved usernames. So you may have some other ones that you want to reserve. You can just type those in and then they'll be reserved, and somebody registering for your site can't set that as their username. Let's see, password length, so you can change that here now in the UI if you want to change it to something longer or shorter. And as you go along, you'll see all of the different settings. So this really, I mean, there are a lot of settings here, okay? So there's groups. So you can say enable group directory, groups in subject, enable category group. So allow groups to review content in specific categories. I don't know that I need that today, but you can always go turn it on later. Then there's the posting rules. So what's minimum, maximum length for post title, post content, how fast and how often can somebody post something. So it's things that'll help you keep people from getting spammed. Here's email, so you can set up a lot of things about your email rules. Files. So this is important because you do want to allow people to upload things to your site. By default, it limits it to, I think, certain sizes for what you're trying to do. I think this is 4 megabytes, so your files can't be bigger than 4 megabytes. If you want to change this, you can change it here, but there's also places a lot of times in your server where you have to go make that change. You can't just change it here and it take effect. You actually have to go change some things in php.ini and some other places to tell it, hey, I'm allowing much bigger files than that. So be aware of that. If you're wanting people to post videos and stuff and save them here, it's not going to work unless it's super compressed or just a really short video, something like that. Most of the time you should have them linked to something like YouTube or PeerTube or Vimeo or something like that anyways. So trust levels, this is basically where you kind of set up like what trust level is a new user at and what trust level is able to do certain actions. So I just again leave this on the default, but you can change that if you want to. Security, so a lot of information here that you can go and set up for security purposes. So one box. Not really sure what one box is. Oh, here you go. So you can enable the embedding of SWF and FLAV Flash files. I would suggest don't do that. Flash is a no-no. Adobe's moving away from Flash. It's just bad. Don't do that. Spam. So here's the things you can set to limit spamming. Rate limits, same way. You can set up rate limits so people don't just post like crazy. You know, developer information if you want to do development. Legal information, so backups. So here's the thing about backups, right? So allow administrators to create backups of the forum, enable read-only mode while taking a backup. So basically while the forum is being backed up, people can't be posting. I wouldn't do it. If you're really worried about it or you have a ton of traffic, you might want to turn that on. But so allow restore, which you just come turn this on if you need to restore your backup. Don't turn this on by default. Turn it on if you actually have to restore a backup for some reason. And you can do this through the CLI anyway, so you don't have to do it here. So there's local storage, maximum number of backups to keep is 5. Run the automatic backups as defined in the backup frequency. So backup frequency is every 7 days, so this is once a week. If you want it more often, change this to be more often. So I tell you all this because I told you my story about not grabbing my backup. I had it set to do backups every 7 days. I just didn't go grab the latest backup, and that was on me. Not on Discourse, not on Linux. That was on me. Search, so it does have a really good search, and you can kind of set some things about searching here. And then here's other, so there's quite a bit of stuff under other that you can go through and kind of set different things up. And I'll just kind of scroll through here so you can see this is a really long list of things. There's a reason I'm not going through every single setting in Discourse. This is something that you, as the administrator of your site, should go through and understand and read about. And if you don't, go check their site, check their documentation, check their forums. User preferences are very important as well. So you can say, you know, here's how I want to do things for my users and allow them things that I want to allow my users to do and set up for their preferences. It does have an API. So if you want to actually use the API, you can go set that up. Has a user API. Tags, so handling of tags, you can set up handling of tags. And of course the dashboard and what it does and what happens here and how it's set up. And then plugins. So they do have plugins. I haven't installed any plugins. There may be some default plugins that are set up, but you can set up the way that the different information looks in the system, things like that. Once you go through that, you've got users. So you can actually see and control all of your users from here. You can change levels, you can set up emails, you can change their email, you can reset their passwords. This is where you basically handle user information and user data. So you can kind of see different things, you can filter them down. So if you have 10,000 users, looking at it here in the full view is not going to be great. It may be better to kind of say, hey, I need to look at this in a grouped view, I need to search for users, things like that. Badges, so you can set up different badges for different levels of doing things. I haven't set that up yet. So emails, this is basically the email information that we had to set up earlier. So you want to make sure this is set up correctly and you want to make sure that it's all good to go. Logs, so you can have all kinds of things getting logged, and sometimes it's important to have those logs whenever you're trying to do any kind of information, figuring out like why something's wrong, what's going on, why is it bad, who's spamming me, who's DNSing me, those kind of things. So you can see a lot of stuff here in the logs that you can actually go check. So you can screen emails, screen IPs, screen URLs, all kinds of things. You can customize. So I'm going to warn you now, customizing the site is not easy. You can change the themes. They have more themes that you can add. They have components that you can go get. I say pick the theme whenever you're first setting it up like I did, and probably leave it alone unless you just really want to go pick another theme or add one. It's not hard, but if you try to do this thing on your own, there's about 10,000 little things that you have to adjust to make it different. So just be careful about the customize. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that you can customize, but it's a pretty involved task to do that. Here's your API, your backups, and your plugins again. So we've got this kind of same list, but you can go through it this way and kind of see the different information here. So that's your setup. So now, I think if we go back, so if you go to admin, by the way, it's the same thing as settings. So let's see, groups. So here you can set up your different groups, and you can kind of set how those trust levels go with those groups. That's an important thing to kind of go through and manage. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right information that you need. Badges, I think we talked about this a while ago, but you can see the badges that you have, and you can kind of go through and set up which badges people get. So if you've done different things, you get these badges, and this is just kind of like a, hey, you reached this milestone or you did this thing, good job. They just let you know how long you've been on the system, what you've been doing with the system, how advanced you are in the system. So keyboard shortcuts. This is a really nice list of keyboard shortcuts. So if you're kind of a keyboard person, you can go here and see what all the keyboard shortcuts are to move around inside of Discourse. And then finally we can go back to our site. I don't think it took my images. I don't see them showing up. Oh yeah, there we go. I just had to refresh. That's not a very pretty image. I think I'm going to make it a little bit longer. I'll probably try to make all this stuff a little bigger. It's just not sized the way that I wanted it to be. So again, I'm not an artist, but there you go. You can kind of see what's happening. And let's see if we go into, so here's kind of the first initial post of Discourse. this is really what it looks like. So if I wanted to change this, I could say welcome to and then category, so you can go pick a different category if you want to. I don't need to right now because I don't have my category set up, but I can make that change. There we go. And it makes the change here inside of the actual post, which is kind of cool. And it even changed. No, I guess this was the text it had when we started. So this is really cool, right? I mean, this is a simple welcome page. It's very easy. It's something that somebody could jump in and kind of see what's going on inside the forum. Then you can click up here to go back to your main page. So if you click on that link, it takes you to the Discourse blog to tell you about what's going on with your community, what's the purpose behind it, those kind of things. It's pretty good information, so I'd make sure to take a look at it. So that's Discourse in a nutshell. I've kind of shown you the settings. I've shown you some real basic things there. If you have questions about it, let me know. I'll do my best to do a follow-up video if you do have a lot of questions. I really like it. Discourse is pretty awesome. It's got a really good look. It's got a great feel to it. You can really set things up to make it very, very customized and very, very customized looking. So if you just look around on the internet, there's lots of posts about how to customize the way that this looks and how it functions. Highly recommend it. It's definitely a nice bit of software that's open source, and these guys are dedicated open source. Don't forget that they do have hosting options if you'd like to have them host it for you. It supports them and it supports their efforts in open source software. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks.